All right, so today I want to talk a little bit about this story out of True North that Candace Malcolm links to. And she says Vancouver billboards advocate for child-free life to reduce carbon footprint. Now, there's many aspects to this. I mean, I think the first one being is just the sheer paranoia when it comes to climate change these days. And the other one being is I think there's some other intentions when it comes to this too. The main thing being, I think the goal of this is to convince mainly the white population, I mean, white and the more intelligent population to stop having kids because if you see this and you're someone who's lower in intelligence, regardless of what race you are. I mean, but I'm especially non-white, I would say. But it doesn't make that much of a difference. But I think there's a little bit of a difference. But the whole point being is that this is geared to convince smarter people to not have kids because when you're not as smart, you don't read this and think a whole heck of a lot about it. The people that are the most that are going to take this the most serious are the millennial middle, upper class, largely white people. Um, those are the ones that are going to take it the most serious. Like those, like I mean, if it was the case, then I mean, you look at the birth rates, even amongst Canada and the states, it's still whites and I think to a lesser degree Asians that have the least kids. Like it's the immigrants from the third world. There's, I mean, maybe they're not having quite as few as they do in their home country, but they're still having a lot of kids, right? So like it or not, this is largely geared at controlling the white population to a degree. I don't think it's big, some massive conspiracy but I think it is a conspiracy to a small degree at least. But the other aspect of it too is just the pure climate alarmism garbage behind it. Is in that if we're actually worried about overpopulation, we should be worried about overpopulation in the third world. Like the birth rates in the first world is like 1.5, 2 kids. I mean, there's some countries, I think Japan's like 1.1, 1.2. Like most first world countries, if it wasn't for immigration, their populations would be going down rather drastically, right? Like if it wasn't for immigration, Canada's population would be going down. I think the states to a lesser degree. I mean, Japan is going down quite a bit because they don't allow immigration, or at least not nearly as much as Canada or the states does. Again, so that is what the whole goal is, and that, like I say, if they actually cared about overpopulation, they would be trying to convince people in the third world to have less kids. But I don't think that that's the goal because number one, the goal isn't climate change. I mean, that is the lesser goal. The main goal is to push for socialism, world government, or at the very least, a bigger and bigger government. But when you push for a bigger and bigger government, eventually it leads to a world government, right? So that's what I think is going on here. And that's, I mean, I think that's rather clear. That's what their intention is. Like the main goal being socialism. And to do that, again, one of the main things they have to do is to convince the smarter people to have less kids and the less smart people to have more kids because the less intelligent a population is, the more they're going to want big government. I mean, that's very clear. That's very clear. The higher IQ people are less likely to want a big government. And for the simple reason that when you're smarter, you're more likely to be able to fend for yourself. You probably have better critical thinking skills. You probably earn more money, which means you don't want to be taxed. You don't want more and more of your money to be taxed. And not only that, you probably know as well that you earn enough money that you can help out poor people without the government having to take it from you at the point of a gun. But when it comes to less intelligent people, they're not as likely to earn more money, to have as good a critical thinking skills, to be able to plan. I mean, one of the biggest markers of intelligence, aside from IQ, is the ability to defer gratification. And the evidence is rather clear that the smarter you are, the greater your ability to defer gratification. Um, Same goes in the reverse. The less smart you are, the less likely you are to be able to defer gratification. And the example of it is it's the old kindergarten cookie test, right? Like they ask these kids. No, I don't know if it's an actual study. I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure. But it makes perfect sense nonetheless. In that they ask little kids when they're little, we can give you one cookie now, or you can wait an hour and we'll give you two. You can wait two, we'll give you four. So on and so forth. And the longer the kids are willing to wait, they track these kids, 20, 30 years down the road. The ones that were willing to wait the longest were the ones that were earning the most, the ones that had the best lives. I mean, not that those two go hand in hand, but they're the ones that are the most successful, and the ones that just take the cookie now are the ones that are most likely to not earn as much money, end up in jail, broken relationships, all that kind of stuff. So again, it's very simple. And that, not to mention too, that's what the governments want. Like, do you honestly believe that the governments want a population that's, very well read, has excellent critical? Of course they'd, especially on the left, but on the right to a degree as well, right? Because the left doesn't want it simply because they can just buy the votes, right? Like, the left just wants it because they can buy the votes, and the right wants it, number one, because they tend to not have as much of a spine. They're afraid to be called racist. And they like it for the cheap labor aspect of it too. I mean, you look at the Republicans in the states; many of them support mass immigration because they want the big corporations want to have the cheap labor, which is again another thing that the left never seems to want to bring up, is that they hate the greedy corporations, but not when they're bringing in illegal immigrants to work for them under the table. Like, they hate exploitation, but not when it's illegal immigrants, right? Like, again, it's just pure hypocrisy. But nonetheless, I wanted to make a video about this because I think it's a pretty important topic, and it should be talked about more, I believe. Um, but again, that's just my thoughts. But anyway, like I said, it's my thoughts. You can comment if you want. But I'm going to leave the video there. If you like to, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, especially. That's the one I'd really want the follows on. But also BitChute and Parler. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.